I'm standing here holding the keys to her apartment, and my hands won't stop shaking. Not from age, not from the heat, from what I'm about to tell you. She said she lived alone. She cried the day I offered to move in. She said she finally felt safe. Then one night, while she was in the shower, I dropped my phone under the bed and I pulled out a man's sneakers, size 10. Fresh, not mine. My name is Clinton Wade. I'm 71 years old, from Birmingham, Alabama, and I need to tell you about Maria before I lose my nerve again. Before I convince myself it wasn't that bad. Before I start missing her voice at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. She's 28, lives in Bacallad City, has these dark eyes that made me feel like I mattered again. And for 8 months, I thought she was mine. I thought I was hers. I thought we were building something real in this little apartment where she said no other man had ever slept. I was wrong about everything. Here, take these, she said, pressing the cold metal into my palm. Now it's your home too. I stared at the keys like they were made of gold. 3 months' rent, paid in advance, just so we'd never worry again. Just so she'd never have to choose between groceries and keeping the lights on. You sure about this, baby? I asked, though my heart was already decided. I'm sure, she whispered, wrapping her arms around my waist. I've never felt this safe with anyone. I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The apartment was small but clean. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, a living room barely big enough for 2 people to sit comfortably. But it felt like a palace when she was in it. She made me coffee every morning, black with 1 sugar, exactly how I liked it. She'd curl up next to me on that old couch and ask about my life back in Alabama, about my daughter Sarah, who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, about the insurance claims I used to investigate, the fraud cases that taught me to spot lies in everything except the woman I was falling for. I never brought other men home, she told me one evening as we watched the sunset through her small window. This place was empty before you. I kissed her forehead, told her I'd never felt more at home anywhere in my life. And I meant it. For the first time since my wife died, I was sleeping through the night. No nightmares about being alone. No wondering if anyone would notice if I didn't wake up. What do you think about marriage? She asked one morning, her head on my chest. My heart nearly stopped. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I mean us, she said softly. I mean forever. I held her tighter, whispered that I'd never wanted forever with anyone the way I wanted it with her. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and imagined introducing her to Sarah. Imagined my daughter finally forgiving me for all the years I chose work over family. Imagined Maria in a white dress saying yes to a broken old man who thought his chance at love had died with his wife. I should have known it was too perfect. Should have known that women like Maria don't fall for men like me without a reason that has nothing to do with love. I wasn't always this desperate. Back in Birmingham, I had a life. A house with a mortgage I'd nearly paid off. A job that mattered, even if it was just catching cheaters and liars trying to steal from insurance companies. A daughter who called me every Sunday until the day she didn't. You're impossible, Dad, Sarah said during our last real conversation. You care more about strangers' problems than your own family. She was right. I'd missed her graduation, her wedding, her first pregnancy announcement. All for cases that seemed urgent at the time but feel meaningless now. I'm retiring, I told her. We can spend more time together. But by then it was too late. The damage was done. The house felt like a tomb after that. Every room reminded me of conversations I should have had, dinners I should have shared, moments I threw away chasing other people's disasters. I started drinking at noon, stopped answering my phone, let the grass grow wild because who was going to see it anyway? That's when I found the Facebook group, Retire in Paradise, Philippines. Americans and Europeans posting photos of beaches, cheap apartments, young girlfriends who treated them like kings. Cost of living is nothing, they wrote, and the women appreciate older men who know how to treat them right. I told myself I was going for the cheap lifestyle, the warm weather, the chance to stretch my pension further. But I was lying. I was going because I was tired of being invisible, tired of walking through grocery stores where nobody knew my name, tired of eating dinner alone while watching game shows that made me feel even more alone. Maria messaged me first, commented on a photo I'd posted of myself fishing back home. "You have kind eyes," she wrote. "Are you really moving to the Philippines?" I stared at her profile picture for an hour. Beautiful, young, smiling, like she meant it. "Yes," I typed back. "Just looking for a fresh start." "Maybe I can show you around," she replied. "I'm from Bacolod. It's peaceful here. Good for healing." I didn't tell her how much healing I needed. Didn't mention the empty house, or the daughter who wouldn't return my calls, or the way I'd started talking to my wife's photograph like she could hear me. We video called every night for 2 months before I bought the plane ticket. She'd make dinner while we talked, ask about my day, laugh at my terrible jokes. "You're different from other foreigners," she said. "You don't just want a party. You want something real." I nodded, believing she could see something in me that Sarah couldn't. Something worth saving. The night before I left Birmingham, I stood in my empty kitchen and made a promise to myself. This time, I'd get it right. This time, I'd choose love over everything else. This time, I wouldn't be alone. My last boyfriend left me with debts, she told me on our second date in Bacolod. We were sitting in a small restaurant near her apartment, sharing pancit and talking about trust. "I swore I was done with men until I met you." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "You're different, Clinton. Older, calm, kind." I squeezed her fingers. "What kind of debts?" I asked, though I was already reaching for my wallet. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said quickly. "I just want to start fresh with you. No baggage." But I insisted on knowing. Credit cards her ex had used in her name. Rent he'd promised to pay but never did. Medical bills from when her mother was sick. "How much?" I asked. She shook her head. "I can't ask you to." "How much, baby?" She looked down at her plate. 80,000 pesos. About $1,500. I transferred it to her GCash account before we left the restaurant. "I live alone now," she said as we walked to her apartment that night. "Just me and my dog, Biko." The apartment was exactly as she'd described in our video calls. Clean, simple, empty. "My ex took everything when he left," she explained, gesturing at the sparse furniture. "Even the television." The next day, I bought her a new TV, a small refrigerator, groceries to fill the empty cabinets. "This place feels empty without you," she said after I'd been back to my hotel 3 nights in a row. "Stay with me, please." I moved in the next morning, brought my 2 suitcases and all the hope I had left. She showed me the spare room. "Maybe your daughter will visit someday," she said, "when she sees how happy you are." I imagined Sarah walking through that door, seeing me with someone who loved me, finally understanding that I'd found peace. "She will," I said. "I know she will." That first month together was perfect. She'd wake up before me, make coffee, kiss me good morning like we'd been married for decades. We'd go to the market together, cook together, fall asleep, watching Filipino movies I didn't understand but pretended to enjoy because she loved them. "I've never felt this safe with anyone," she whispered one night after we made love. "Promise me you won't leave like the others." I held her face in my hands. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "This is home now." "Your home." She cried then, real tears that I kissed away, believing they came from joy, from relief, from finally finding someone who wouldn't abandon her the way everyone else had. I should have asked why she was really crying. Should have wondered why someone so young and beautiful needed an old man's protection. Should have questioned why she never mentioned friends, family, anyone else in her life except the cousin who conveniently lived far away. But I didn't ask, because I didn't want to know. Because for the first time in years, I felt needed, wanted, essential to someone's happiness. "Whose jacket is this?" I asked, holding up the windbreaker I'd found in the back of her closet. It was navy blue, size medium, definitely not mine. Maria glanced up from her phone, barely interested. "Oh, that's my cousin's," she said. "He left it here last month when he visited." I hung it back where I'd found it, but something felt off. The jacket smelled like cologne. Expensive cologne. Not the cheap stuff you'd expect from someone who needed to crash at his cousin's place. "Your cousin from where?" I asked later that evening as we watched TV. "Cebu," she said without looking away from the screen. "He's looking for work here in Bacolod." I nodded, filed the information away, tried to forget about it. But then her phone started ringing during dinner. She glanced at the screen and flipped it face down. "Not important," she said, but I caught the name for a split second before she turned it over. "Alex." "Who's Alex?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She laughed, but it sounded forced. "My cousin, the one I told you about. He just lost his job, remember?" The phone rang again, and again. Each time, she let it go to voicemail. "Maybe you should answer it," I suggested. "He might need help." "Later," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Right now, I just want to focus on us." That night, she held me tighter than usual, whispered things she'd never said before, told me I was the best thing that had ever happened to her, made love to me like she was afraid I might disappear. And I believed it was because she loved me, because she couldn't bear the thought of losing what we had. I didn't realize she was overcompensating, trying to distract me from the questions that were starting to form in the back of my mind. Questions about Alex and his cologne, and why he needed to call her so urgently if he was just her cousin looking for work. "You're overthinking things," I told myself as I lay awake listening to her breathe beside me. "She's been nothing but good to you. Don't ruin this by being paranoid." But paranoia is just pattern recognition with a bad reputation, and after 30 years of investigating insurance fraud, I knew when something didn't add up. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Wasn't ready to face the possibility that I'd been played by someone young enough to be my granddaughter. I was reaching for my phone when I felt them. Sneakers. Nike. Size 10. Fresh enough that they still smelled new. I pulled them out slowly, staring at them like they might explain themselves. "Whose are these?" I asked when Maria came out of the shower, hair wrapped in a towel, still humming the song she'd been singing under the water. Her smile vanished the moment she saw what I was holding. "They're my brother's," she said quickly, too quickly. "He slept here once when you were at the hotel." I turned the shoes over in my hands. Clean, barely worn. "I didn't know you had a brother," I said. She sat down on the bed, wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't talk about him much. We're not close." "What's his name?" I asked. She hesitated. "Rico. And he wears size 10? "Yes." "And he just happened to forget his brand new Nike sneakers under our bed?" She stood up, walked to the dresser, started brushing her hair aggressively. "I don't like your tone, Clinton." I set the shoes down carefully. "I'm not using a tone. I'm asking questions. Why are you questioning everything I say? Don't you trust me?" She turned around, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Calculation. Like she was deciding which lie to tell next. "Of course I trust you," I said, though the words felt hollow. "I just want to understand." "There's nothing to understand. My brother stayed here one night. He forgot his shoes. That's it." She walked over and kissed me on the forehead. "Baby, you're scaring me. You're acting like you think I'm lying to you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling while she breathed steadily beside me and tried to convince myself I was being ridiculous. So what if she had a brother she'd never mentioned? So what if he forgot expensive shoes under her bed? Families were complicated. I, of all people, should understand that. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those sneakers. Clean. Recent. Definitely not forgotten by someone who'd only spent one night here months ago. And for the first time since I'd arrived in the Philippines, I wondered what else I didn't know about the woman sleeping next to me. I stayed out most of the day, walking around Bacolod, trying to clear my head. When I got back to the apartment building, a man was walking out of the gate. Young, maybe 35, definitely foreign. Australian accent when he nodded and said, "G'day, mate." I nodded back, watched him walk away. Tall, athletic, wearing Nike sneakers that looked exactly like the ones I'd found under our bed. "Hey, baby," Maria called when I walked through the door. "How was your day?" She was cooking dinner, acting completely normal, like nothing had happened, like there hadn't been another man leaving our building 20 seconds before I arrived. "Fine," I said, kissing her cheek. "Who was that guy leaving just now?" She didn't even look up from the stove. "What guy?" "Tall guy. Australian. Just walked out of the building." She shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe visiting someone upstairs." We ate dinner in silence. Well, she chattered about her day, about the soap opera she'd been watching, about plans for the weekend. But I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about the Australian man, about his confident walk, about the way he'd said "g'day," like he belonged here. That night, I slept on the couch, told her I had a headache and didn't want to keep her awake with my tossing and turning. She accepted the explanation without question, kissed me goodnight, and went to bed alone. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the building, footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, water running through pipes. Normal sounds, but everything felt different now, like I was seeing the place clearly for the first time. I thought about calling Sarah, about admitting I'd made another mistake, about asking if I could come home and pretend none of this had ever happened. But what would I tell her? That I'd fallen for a woman young enough to be my granddaughter? That I'd spent my savings trying to buy love from someone who was probably laughing at me behind my back? No, I'd figure this out myself. Find out what was really going on. Prove to myself that I wasn't just a foolish old man who'd been taken for a ride, but deep down, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. "Can I see your cousin's Facebook?" I asked the next morning over coffee. Maria looked up from her phone, surprised. "Why?" "I'm curious about your family. You never talk about them much." She set her phone down. "He doesn't have Facebook anymore. Deleted it last month." I nodded, pretended to accept the explanation. But that afternoon, while she was at the market, I went through her photo albums on her laptop, scrolled back through months of pictures, looking for anything that might explain the shoes, the jacket, the Australian man. I found it in an album labeled 2019. A photo of Maria with a tall, athletic man. They were in Hong Kong, standing in front of the harbor, his arm around her shoulders. The caption read, "Me and Alex, Hong Kong 2019. He was kissing her cheek. She was smiling like she meant it. Alex, the cousin. Except cousins don't usually kiss each other that way. Don't usually take romantic vacations together. Don't usually look at each other like they're in love." I stared at the photo for a long time, memorized his face. Young, handsome, confident. Everything I wasn't. Everything I could never be again. "Find what you were looking for?" Maria asked from the doorway. I hadn't heard her come back. She was standing there with grocery bags in her hands, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Just looking at your photos," I said, closing the laptop. "You were beautiful in Hong Kong." "Thank you," she said, setting down the groceries. "That was a long time ago." "With your cousin Alex?" She froze. "Yes. He doesn't look much like a cousin in that picture." She walked to the kitchen, started unpacking vegetables. "I don't know what you mean, Maria." "What?" "Look at me." She turned around reluctantly. "Who is Alex really?" For a moment I thought she might tell me the truth. I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or relief at finally being caught. But then her expression hardened. "He's my cousin," she said firmly, "and I don't like being interrogated in my own home." That night, I didn't come home at all. Checked into a small motel across town and tried to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her directly, demand the truth, make her choose between me and whoever Alex really was. But I already knew what her choice would be. Instead, I sent a message to Sarah. "I messed up again," I wrote. "I'm sorry for everything." I didn't expect her to reply. She hadn't responded to any of my messages in 3 years. But somehow, putting it in writing made it feel real, made me face what I'd been trying to avoid. I was alone again. And this time, it was my own fault. I went back to the apartment one last time. Not to fight, not to demand explanations, just to end it cleanly, to walk away with whatever dignity I had left. I wrote her a letter while sitting in a cafe down the street, kept it simple, told her I knew about Alex, told her I wasn't angry, just disappointed, told her I hoped she found whatever she was looking for. She was feeding Biko when I walked through the door. The dog ran to me like always, tail wagging, excited to see me. I scratched his ears one last time, then handed Maria the letter along with the photo we'd taken on my 71st birthday. The one where we looked happy, where we looked real. She read the letter in silence while I waited. Her face didn't change, no tears, no apologies, no explanations. When she finished, she folded it carefully and set it on the table. "Take care, Clinton," she said. That was it. 3 words, delivered like she was saying goodbye to a neighbor, not someone who'd spent 8 months believing they were building a life together. I stood there for a moment, waiting for something more, some acknowledgement of what we'd shared, some hint that it hadn't all been a lie. But she just picked up Biko and walked to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out. Didn't look back, didn't say goodbye to the dog, didn't slam the door or make a scene or do any of the things a younger man might have done. I just left, quietly, the same way I'd lived most of my life. I'm in Cebu City now. Small apartment, 1 bedroom, view of the busy street below. I teach English online to kids in China and Vietnam. Make enough to pay rent and buy groceries. It's not the retirement I'd imagined, but it's honest work. I write emails to Sarah every week, tell her about my students, about the books I'm reading, about the guitar I bought secondhand from a pawn shop down the street. She hasn't replied yet, but I keep writing anyway. Maybe someday she'll forgive me for all the years I chose the wrong things. Maybe someday she'll understand that I'm trying to be better. I see them sometimes. Other American men my age, walking through the malls with girlfriends young enough to be their daughters. They look happy, confident, like they've figured out something I missed. And maybe they have. Maybe their stories end differently than mine. But I watch them, and I remember how it felt to believe someone needed me, how it felt to wake up next to someone who whispered, "Good morning," like it meant something, how it felt to think I'd finally gotten love right. The truth is, I don't know if Maria ever loved me. I don't know if any of it was real or if it was all just survival for her. A lonely old man with a pension and a need to feel important. Maybe she told herself she cared about me. Maybe it was easier than admitting she was playing a role. But I know this. I loved her. Completely. Desperately. The way you love someone when you think they're your last chance at happiness. And that love was real, even if hers wasn't. Some nights, when I can't sleep, I imagine what I'd say to other men in my situation. Men who are lonely and broken and looking for something that feels like love in all the wrong places. I'd tell them what I couldn't tell myself. If you're really lonely, don't go looking for love in people who have to survive. Don't mistake gratitude for affection. Don't confuse need with want. But mostly, I'd tell them what I'm still learning. It's better to be alone and honest than together and lying to yourself. It's better to face the emptiness than to fill it with someone who sees you as a solution to their problems rather than a person worth loving. I'm 71 years old. I've got maybe 10 good years left if I'm lucky, and I'm going to spend them trying to earn my daughter's forgiveness, teaching kids to speak English, and playing guitar badly in an apartment where nobody lies to me. It's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending I deserve. And maybe, if I'm really lucky, it's not an ending at all. Maybe it's just another beginning. The shoes are probably still under that bed in Bacolod. Maybe Alex came back for them. Maybe he's sleeping there now, believing Maria when she tells him he's the only one. Maybe he'll find the next man's belongings hidden in the closet and have his own moment of realization. Or maybe he knows exactly what's going on and doesn't care. Maybe he's younger and smarter and doesn't need to believe in forever the way I did. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I've got my own life to figure out, my own mistakes to fix, my own daughter to call, even if she doesn't call back. And if you're listening to this story and seeing yourself in it, remember, the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care how much you've invested or how much you need the lie to be real. It just sits there under the bed, waiting for you to find it. The question is, what are you going to do when you do?